Woo-hoo-hoo. Holy shit, y'all. Today is the day. As I've been, prepping to hit record on this episode this morning, kind of working through my outline, just filled with so much excitement. And a lot of feeling like, hell yeah, this is the moment. I love it when it feels this way, when everything feels really aligned as I'm about to record a podcast episode. This is actually being recorded on Saturday, so a few days before it's going to drop on Tuesday. It's early in the morning on Saturday morning. Everybody's still asleep in the house, but I knew the way my schedule is going to be this weekend that it needed to get recorded this morning. So it was really lovely to just, wake up to a quiet house, my house. Feels so good to say that with, my 3 boys asleep in their beds, my partner fast asleep as well, and to be coming into my office to be recording this episode, an episode about something that I had a vision around, have created, brought into the 3D world. And then through, what I consider to be collaborating, right? The women that have joined in with me in that community created something far beyond what I had envisioned. And that's a really incredible process to go through, y'all. I'm sorry, I feel like I'm going to be really, I'm not even going to apologize. You're getting my deep, sexy voice this morning because I'm up so early. I'm like, whoa, we have dropped like a good... I don't know how many decibels, but it's deep this morning. So yeah, just taking a moment before I dive in to really kind of set the scene for y'all on how this moment in time feels just really like so many. I felt very emotional reading through my outline. I felt like stars aligning kind of feelings of like this moment on my timeline has been planned for millennia before it. So, welcome to this episode. I know I've been, letting you guys in on the community for a while now, but this is where I get to really deep dive into it, take my sweet time, just savoring and sharing with you what it's like, so that you have a really beautiful picture of what's going on inside that space, and how you can be a part of it, really outlining that process. So I'm excited. Now to start, I kind of tying into last week's episode, which y'all know was not planned, and I just have to say it has been once again a really good lesson for me. Last week's episode was actually a pretty tough one for me to record. There was a lot of editing on the back end, and I was digesting last week like what that was all about. And it was because it was such a big send for me. I didn't realize it at the time when I was recording it, but it's a huge deal to say aloud to yourself to commit to your biggest dreams. Even more so to do that in front of your community, right? Before you really know the how, before you figured out all the ins and outs of that. So I didn't realize when I was recording it that that's what I was doing, looking back on it and kind of my nervous system post all of that. Like I almost didn't even post that episode. I was so kind of just, the ego coming up, because your ego doesn't like when you expand into that next biggest version, right? It's really afraid that it's going to be abandoned. Parts of you are going to have to die, and it's being really gentle, this process of helping all of those parts come along but find new areas to work in, basically. So it has been so surreal to have had that be my personal experience, and yet have had so many of my, especially my one-on-one clients, reaching out who had listened to the podcast and saying that episode I don't know what was going on in that episode, but your energy, the like frequency you were putting out just hit me. And that made me really excited hearing that, because one of the things that I feel like happens so much through the podcast, and this isn't even, something that's happening through necessarily the words I'm saying that you're hearing, but it's a vibrational transference of energy. This like activation that can happen when you hear somebody else in their power speaking their truth. It can light the same, can set off similar things in you. So it was pure magic to see how trusting myself, going for something that was definitely scary, especially for my internal landscape. There's a lot of unconscious stuff coming up last week. In trusting that gut feeling, it had such a big impact for a lot of you listening. And part of the big piece that came through with that episode was a deeper dive into my own, recognition of what I am building here, what I want to create in the world, and stepping into that grander vision. So as I said in that last episode, I wanted to take some time in this episode before I dive into the ins and outs of the community to also really speak more to that piece, because I want to be part of a huge change in the world that I feel like you all are feeling as well. I think that's why you're drawn to me. And to do that, I want to set some context. In the US, I would say we still have to do divorce mainly in isolation. So there is, a real stigma still around divorce. And for so many considering it, it's a very deeply private, often pretty shrouded in shame and fear. And like I said earlier, that just isolation piece, because we as a culture view it as something really negative, really bad. And you'll notice this, just the automatic thing people often say to you when they find out that you're oh, we're getting a divorce. Like, oh my God, I'm so sorry. It's changing slightly. I feel like we've gotten a little bit better at people realizing, oh, maybe that's not necessarily a negative, or maybe this person isn't unhappy about that. But still, it's still pretty, I would say, very deeply ingrained in most of us that divorce is not a good choice. It's the last choice on the list when it comes to your marriage. It's, the thing we all hoped wouldn't happen. And the issue with doing that, with having such a one-sided, very, very negative view about divorce, is that for one, we know the percentages. It's 43, 44% of people are going to experience this. So that is a really, really significant amount of people that are going to go through this experience, that are now having to do it really hiding their struggles or what they're having to experience while they're considering it, because they're fearing the judgment from their friends, their family, their society. I know so many of you will relate to this. I've said many times that the only people that really knew I was going through the excruciating pain in my marriage that I was my therapist and my best friend. I really waited to tell any of my family members until that decision was made, because I just knew the load that would add, trying to convince and bring everybody else along with me when I was trying to just figure it out myself. And as you guys know, with 70% of women being the ones that initiate divorce, this secrecy directly negatively impacts women because it isolates them during one of the most challenging transitions of their lives. And I really do think this causes so much harm that could be alleviated by directly going for that stigma, by really changing the messaging around divorce. Because when we make divorce something awful, then it has to be hidden. And when it's hidden, we disadvantage, the nearly 40% of individuals, of families that are going to experience it. And when it's seen as a negative, then instead of offering lots of compassion and resources to those families and people going through it, we as a society have perpetuated this kind of shame and isolation around it. So it becomes a deeply personally difficult journey where you're not supported by a community. And then even, if you do end up getting divorced, as so many of you, some of my past clients, myself know, often that journey leads to losing relationships with people that you currently had, perhaps a community, right? In my religious community, I really don't think I would have had a space there divorced. It would have been very difficult to not feel like an outsider or a less than all of the time, because there's a very clear standard there of what the goal is, and you haven't reached the goal. So that is, I wanted to put in context for you, which I don't even feel like I necessarily need to. I just want to remind you all of the soup, if you are considering divorce right now, that you are living in. And obviously this is just, in the US. I know I have lots of listeners in other countries, but if that is and when I say the soup, right, that's like the Kool-Aid everybody's drinking that you may not even realize is around, that you may not be fully appreciating is adding a whole extra layer of difficulty to this decision, because it has to be so secret, because it is so shameful, and having to do it in isolation, when we know humans thrive and make better choices when they are supported, when they are in communities that love them, that help them find their way forward in trusting and supportive ways. So you guys know that is like my dream. My dream is that we take this, what's been the mode in the past, and obviously we've come leaps and bounds from the past where women couldn't even get divorced. To get divorced, you had to prove abuse, or, and it had to be physical abuse. It had to be severe, horrific neglect. And even then, I remember hearing that, Princess Diana's mother, when she got divorced from her father, had to give up the children. That's not that far removed, y'all, that, facing divorce, it was not, oh, I still get to keep my kids. There's a lot of pieces that are not that far in our history that have made divorce even more difficult for women. So we've come a long way, and I want us to go so much farther in the future. And the future I dream of is one where we acknowledge that divorce is just a choice, and that for many people, it is the best choice. And through doing that, so, I want to caveat and say that for all of you, it may not be the choice, right? But in allowing divorce to be seen as also a good choice that's on the table, a choice that can be best for some families, what that does is, if we follow that train of thought back, that then removes a lot of the shame and the judgment when you're in the middle of considering it, which just removes so much of the pressure and the isolation that couples experience in that situation. My dream is to be able to flip the script really around divorce, and to see it not as this awful thing that we want to hide away from other people, but an opportunity. We really started acknowledging, which is what's going to happen in the future, y'all, because marriage has changed so much in the last 100 years, and what we are expecting from it and what we are wanting now from our partnerships and the way humans are evolving, what we are asking from our partnerships is so much bigger than it's ever been before. We're going to need to get more honest about how difficult that is, and provide more resources for people going through it, realizing the old stereotypes of staying married for 50 years and just grinning and bearing it aren't applying anymore. And so if we can do that, then the moment of considering divorce becomes, like Catch the Vision with me, an opportunity for growth and healing and rediscovery, instead of it being this awful, oh my God, what'd you guys do wrong? That's so horrible. Your marriage is in the middle of considering divorce. Ew, bad, gross, right? It's this, okay, this is what most people are going to go through. Most people have moments in their relationships where it is, we got to reevaluate, we got to change course. And it becomes an opportunity to go deeper into yourselves and into each other, right? Because That's why I love being in this spot of being with you all when we're in the considering space. I actually was working with a client that I've known for at least over a year now, who has not made the decision. And just recently, through that journey of me working with her, coaching her, seen her go multiple different ways. Like at moments, it really felt like perhaps she was going to get divorced. She has an affair partner, and really going in on that relationship, feeling the most connected there. But all along, she was just really trusting her soul calls and not allowing the pressure from the outside sources to kind of get to her. And it's been so fascinating to see how what she decided was to actually let go of her affair partner and to settle into more of a space. She's actually been open with her husband about the affair. That has sparked a whole bunch of growth for him diving deeper into his work, which I've talked about this on the podcast. Like that's the crazy, amazing things that can happen. And it doesn't necessarily mean they're going to stay together. But for right this that opening there on his end has led her to feeling like, what, I want to actually open up some more space right now in this period of time for me. She's actually leaning into being more honest about like her wants and desires in work. And I just was a reconfirmation to me of like, this is the magic that can happen when we start as a society understanding that this is a normal, I'm going to go so far as to say that at some point, if you're going to be married, there is going to come a point and it's going to be normal and natural to consider divorce. And that is not the like, oh my God, it's so awful. That actually, if each of those moments when you're getting there, you and your partner are opening up, talking to each other, going, holy shit, okay, we either got to like get back on track or we got to figure out if this is not a thing for us. Look at the possibilities, right, y'all? Look at what could come out of that, the relationships that we could be building versus, I think, because we have so much shame around it, when it comes up, when we all feel that like, oh my God, I'm kind of not feeling this, we have a tendency to shut down, to not talk about it, or to escalate, right? To go into our learned fight, flight, freeze, fawn patterns. So this isn't just like this vision, this community. It isn't just about surviving this process. It isn't even just about making that decision, although that is a huge piece of it. It is really about learning the tools to thrive on the other side. And I love that where I'm at and the tool that I'm giving you specifically is for this super special time of when you're still considering. Because as you just heard from that example, there is so much growth, so many possibilities here to learn, to go deeper, to become more of yourself, and to ultimately, through that process, either, be able to create a life where you go deeper with the current partner you have, where they also together, the two of you, create something new, or you're able to create a life going forward from that divorce where you get to thrive, you get to have freedom and purpose and joy, mainly, as I've been seeing from the community, because you went through the process, not, being torn up through the isolation and the shame and losing so many people through that process, but through the journey, like I said, that I'm watching in the community of having women telling you like, I see you, I got you, you can trust yourself. And as you come out the other side, you now also still have this community of women that you have connected in with that get you, that get this really specific, unique process that you have been through. So of course there are I'm not the only one in this space, right? But I do want to talk about what makes my community unique, why I feel it's really one of a kind, and the really unique mission that I set out to create when I started it. I wanted it to be one of a kind, and I am so proud, and I really do feel like it is. It is very unique, very special in its own way. And so I just wanted to drop in and highlight and just like share in the yumminess of it with y'all, because it is really, really special in this way. So one of the ways that I feel like it is really one of a kind, the community, is you all know me. Like, I am very wild, strong, and playful. And when I started building the community, I was like, I don't just want this to be your typical kind of support group or just like a Facebook group that all have their places, right? But I wanted something unique, new, and different. And so the space is very infused with my energy and my perspective. And you'll see that in the branding. I kind of went for like a 70s theme. I wanted it to still, yes, we're talking about very difficult things. We're talking about, the process of considering divorce. We're going super, super deep into tough ideas, choices, emotions. And also, I wanted it to be like a microcosm of life. That is life. You're going to have all those dark, intense, deep, what I've referred to on the podcast is like the negative 50. And by negative, I mean that like on the charge on a battery, right? The negative charge on a battery. It's not that it's bad. It's just that it has this polarity. But along with that, you've got to have all of the positive as well. And that is why the community in it, there is this very like vibrant and dynamic sisterhood where not only are we like crying and processing deep shit together, but there is also so much of like laughing and dancing and dreaming together. And one of the, community guidelines that's I included when I was setting this up was this idea of being able to really also find the light even in the darkest of moments. And I love this piece about it. I remember last month we did have actually in one of our workshops, I actually did have us dance. We've started, this is a new thing that we added into the community starting last month. We actually have a once a month, like the sex talk we all deserve. I wouldn't call it a workshop. It's more like a free flowing, just, open discussion conversation. And we are so, the word that's coming through is like raunchy on those calls. And I mean it in like the best way. It's so yummy to be so free and authentic and just like let it all hang out in that space. It's making me think of one of the chapters in Women Who Run with the Wolves is like this. I think I've mentioned it on the podcast episode where she talks about, these old women like joking about sex or something together. And that is the energy that I wanted. That same flavor of like, we're all adults here. We get to own our choices. We get to be ourselves. Nobody has to pretend. Nobody has to. And we're all at different like levels. That was the other thing on our most recent sex talks. It was so cool to like feel the energy of everybody in the room being in different spaces, different ideas, maybe different, areas of their journey, different areas of exploration. And instead of it being like, oh, she's so cool, or I need to be doing it like her, it's like everybody has their space. And I think that comes deeply from, my personal way of relating to the world and my personal style that you guys hear on this podcast that I've developed of being very bold, authentic, and unapologetic in the way I want to move through the world and the person I want to be. And so one of the things that makes the community really one of a kind is that it attracts women who are like that and who are maybe not able to be that way in their everyday lives. Because most of us come from maybe unhealthy family dynamics or places where we were not accepted for who we truly are. But in the community, I've seen how much my women are really like, when you come into the community, there's a sense of signing up for this transformative journey, right? It's not just like, I'm just joining something to sit back and watch. Like, you're joining something to get right in the middle of it, to be a part of it and to be transformed by it, to transform others through sharing your journey and to be transformed by others. So with that in mind, like that's really one of the biggest things that I feel like makes the community one of a kind, very special, very different than anything else you're going to see outside, in other areas in the considering divorce, divorce relationship space, this takes me to the heart of like really helping and speaking to who this space is for, especially if you've been listening and been thinking, the community sounds interesting. Am I ready for it? Would I be a good fit for it? I want to explain a little bit more about who I built the community for. Let me start off by saying, if you love the podcast, you will adore this community. You will fucking adore this community because, the heart and soul of my founding members, the women that I brought in to really build out the foundation of the community, was women that I had met on 90-minute intensives or women that I have coached with previously in one-on-one coaching, and who I knew really had that same vibe, that same energy, and could go deep and really build that space to begin with, which is, I just owe so much gratitude. And, those of you that will join the community in the future will feel this, that they have built really that first heart and soul of the community that now gets to grow with every single one of you that join, right? They have created this container that I'm now like, oof, yeah, this is yummy. This is safe. This is what I wanted. Now it's ready to bring in even more women. So if you're wondering if you're going to fit into that incredible group of women, I want you to really come to that decision from that like soul call space in your body, because the women that are getting the most out of the community are the ones that really want to dive deeper into the ideas and the energy that you feel on the podcast. They listen to the podcast and it's like, oof, their bodies light up. There's a huge resonance energetically there. I'd say the community is also for women who are ready to break free from societal expectations. Like, this is not going to be a good community for you if you are still really wanting to hold deeply to old programming. If you're really wanting to, if you're still in a space, and I respect this, a space of wanting to, say, well, shouldn't we also make sure that, we're thinking about what God wants for us, or what what our religions have told us. I'm going to be real. I'm going to be so real with y'all. This space is so not about holding on to old programming. It is very much about going from a space of trusting yourself, of questioning the societal conditioning you've received, of really breaking through the illusion and the matrix of what you've been. That's kind of a tough word, but the word that's coming is like the way that many of us have been brainwashed, around what we deserve in life, what we as women are capable of, what is possible in relationships. Another huge aspect of the community, if you're wondering who is this space for, it's going to be for women who want to rediscover who they are. Okay, this is not about what does my husband want me to be? What does my family want me to be? How can I become those things so that I can fit back into the box? We're talking, untamed, getting out of the cages, no longer chasing the dirty bunny, and learning how to do that really unapologetically. And God, that is what the community is so fucking fire for. Because I'll talk about this a little later in the episode, but there's, you have mirror neurons that when you are seeing women around you who are also showing up unapologetically, speaking their truths, owning their desires, vulnerably sharing what they're going through and watching them work through it, that creates such incredible changes in yourself. These are the kind of changes that I was like interested in. I did not have much experience with because all my coaching's been one-on-one, right? But I knew that in group settings, it could be multiplied because of this exact aspect. And by far, it's what I have seen since launching the community is just how much being in a space with other women who are also trying to rediscover who they are, trying to live more unapologetically, it like gives you permission. Your brain realizes, oh, I'm not the crazy one. There's actually a whole bunch of like awesome, badass women that I like who are doing the same thing. I'm down for this. The other thing that the community, is for, the other types of women that it's for are women who want to build lives that feel really joyful, aligned, and I would say more self-directed. Okay. And why I'm really clarifying this is because this all sounds nice, right? Like, oh yeah, I want to live a, aligned, self-directed life. But y'all, this is the path, not chosen for a reason, which is that it takes deep, soulful, terrifying at times work to meet yourself in this place, to really go for what you want, to start being honest with yourself. I had a client earlier this week who, she was just acknowledging her pain and there was a lot of deep sadness, grief, anger mixed in with this acknowledgement that she doesn't know really who she is and what she wants, right? And that's, God, that is the complexity of being raised in patriarchy as a woman, really having your identity, who you are, stripped away from you so early on in life. And then later on, wanting to reclaim it. The reclaiming of that, if you guys read Women Who Run with the Wolves, it is a deep fucking underworld journey. And so the women in this community are women who are like, yeah, I want to do that. And I want to do it with other women by my side. So I hope that's giving you a picture of these are incredible, kick-ass, badass women. And you will know if you are one of those women because you will feel it in your soul. When those things that I was just describing, they will light you up. You will be like, oh my God, yeah, that's where I want to be. You may be also terrified and a little bit I don't know if I can do it. And to that, I would say, hell yeah, that's exactly where you want to be. That's the feeling that shows you are headed into your biggest, most soul-led life. That kind of, I'm at the top of the roller coaster. It's about to go down. Here we go. Okay, so kind of tying back in, I really want you guys to also understand that in this community, because of the bigger vision I have of really wanting to change the stigma around divorce, to see considering divorce not as a failure, right? Even considering it can be seen as a failure. You shouldn't even be at that point, but seeing it as a doorway to transformation. The community, yeah, I think I need to add a caveat here, a little bit of a cautionary statement of the community is power. It is, I don't know if I'd say it's power. It is powerful, and expect to be empowered by joining it. So do not take it on lightly because this community feels to me in many ways like a portal. It is the door you get to choose if you want to move into spaces where you're really shifting, where you are moving into a world where, this is an alternate reality in some ways, the community. It is the reality that my women in that community are creating for their futures, the reality they want to live in. It's the reality I live in, which is a reality where divorce was not the end. It was a doorway into a new chapter of my life, and actually into a whole new world, a whole different world that I now live in. And that journey through considering divorce, instead of tearing me down and making me smaller and less than myself, it built me into who I am, which is now a woman who moves through her life unapologetically, bravely. And so this community is about that. It is about women who want to walk through that door, and a space that's going to help you to do that, feeling supported, empowered, and celebrated. So if you really want to be in a space where you want to keep hating on yourself for considering divorce, where you want to keep buying in to the ideas that it's awful of you to want more, this is not going to be a good space for you. And I just feel I always have to say this piece of and I get it. Humans, we are beautifully I'm going to use the word kinky here. We have our kinky ways of wanting to stay in pain, wanting to stay small, and that's just part of the journey. This space is going to light you up and open you up. Understand that in choosing to be a part of it, things are going to shift for you. Things are going to move. I've already seen it so much in the community. We've had at least 2 to 3 women. This has just blown my mind because I was not expecting this, but at least 2 to 3 women in the last month of the community end up like taking the step and communicating with their husbands, like talking about it, making forward movement. So I think I want to impress upon you not only the gorgeous like beauty of the space, but also the powerfulness of the space for transformative movement. Keep that in mind when you're considering joining. Like if you are, get fucking ready. Because there's a bunch of badass powerhouses in here and you'll likely become one through spending more time with them. Now, I also want to say the other thing that I love about what I'm seeing in the community is the ripple effect that is coming off of it, which is that as my women in the community have started being more unapologetic in this space, right? I described it as like, this little alternate reality that is their space where they get to be unapologetic and brave. You can't up level and, open in one space and it not also end up affecting other areas of your life. And that's exactly what I'm seeing is as my women are healing and growing and starting to thrive within the community, I see it filtering out into, and it will long-term. These are the amazing, like big long-term views I have of the world, is that then ripples out into their families and their communities. Like this work, yes, it's going to be so incredible for you, those of you that get to join on an individual level, but it is so much bigger as well. It is about really creating generational change, right? You guys know, I'm like obsessed with that. I'm obsessed with being a generational chain breaker, with being someone who comes from a family where there was a narrative around divorce of it being awful. And, women in my family, right? I did not have any women growing up who went out and created lives for themselves or had big, vibrant personal lives, or hell, definitely no one who was an entrepreneur and started their own business and created changes, big changes in the world. And not that that's necessarily what you have to do, but the point is, I never saw women really knowing what they wanted, going for it in the world and living lives that were theirs. And that act actually helping and supporting and creating better lives for their children, right? The women who did that were always like stigmatized and looked down on and seen as like, oh, she works instead of staying home with her children. Yeah, fuck that. This community is not just a like safe space, but a revolutionary movement that I want to create for women reclaiming their power, reclaiming their lives in a way that's like, not only do I get to thrive, but me thriving is the very thing that lets all the people I love thrive. And if the choice actually ends up being divorce, I am going to abso-fucking-lutely thrive after that. So I want to drop in to help illuminate even more kind of what the community's mission is around these aspects and to give you the ins and outs of our community guidelines. I love these. I loved building these out. I'm not going to go into too much depth. When you get into the community, they'll be listed and you can read them more thoroughly, but I just want to highlight them so that you guys get even more of where I've been giving you broad strokes around the community, we're kind of diving now into the details. So some of our guidelines in the community, one of the ones that I love, and obviously you guys knew this was coming, I've talked about it quite a bit, is that this is a space to drop masks and show up authentically. So this is not a space where we are anonymous. This is a space where, we are showing our faces, our names, we are our full real selves. And I think that's also another like one of a kind part of this community, is because, as I'll go into later, the safeguards I've put in place that not just anybody can join, that there is a process to get in. That is specifically for this aspect of it not involving anonymity. You are showing up as your full self. You are showing your face. You are talking about real stuff, because how the fuck are you going to get any help, any real coaching or any insight if you don't get to actually share what's actually going on inside for you. And I have to say, just a quick side note, this has been one of the things that has blown me away the most about my community, is how the women that have joined have really embraced that full send. I have been on coaching calls with them now where I'm like, wow, they have so much trust in me, so much trust in the women in the community, that they are willing to let themselves be fully seen in all the messiness. And because of that, I'm seeing the results that they are getting. I cannot emphasize enough how much letting your masks drop and showing up authentically is life changing. As women, we have been so trained to not be able to do that, right? We're like constantly performing in all other areas of our life. I feel myself doing this, like even still, right? This is something that I know I'll be healing from and trying to retrain the rest of my life, because being raised in Mormonism, it was like your bread and butter to wear masks, and to even wear masks for yourself, right? I still find myself hiding from aspects of myself. So one of our biggest guidelines and core pillars of the community is that we bring our full selves, we drop our masks, and we show up authentically. It makes me think of people who go to therapy and like lie to their therapist. I'm like, y'all, why be paying for something where you're not even going to show up and be you and get the help you deserve? That's not what the space is for. This is a space to go all in, be yourself, let yourself be seen. And because of that, another huge guideline that we have is that in this space, everybody's journey is honored. Whether someone is staying, whether they are leaving, whether they are unsure, there is no baseline like this is what you should be doing, or why aren't you further along? Or it is not a space for women like telling each other, well, this is probably what you should do, or how about this? And I've noticed the women in the community currently like really get and understand this, the way of supporting each other. And the way we do that most is by being like, you've got this. You can trust yourself. It's really about redirecting each one of us to that inner knowing that knows what's best. Because as you guys know, I do not coach women believing I know what the right answer is. I know from my own experience, from watching women go through it, that I would never presume to know what someone should do in this process of considering divorce, because making that decision requires so many other aspects of yourself that only you and your deep soul calls can know. Right. And those soul calls are like, that's that like inner knowing I'm always referencing. That's that deep knowing beyond words, knowing beyond the mind kind of in your body. So a big aspect of the community is respecting everybody's journey is their own. And, you know, although you will probably notice, I would say there's a lot of women in the community that I would say are leaning probably more towards divorce. I think that's just the nature of what we find ourselves in at this time in history, which, you know, is that we have shamed divorce so aggressively that most of us don't even get support around considering it until we're like 3, 4, 7, 8, 10 years down the road of the moment when there was a chance, right? When we could have opened up the door. And even then, I see so many of you, even if you are at that point, you're still trying to open doors, trying to open windows, trying to see what's possible with your partners. So just know this is not a space where you're going to come in and it's going to be like, you should be doing this. Why aren't you doing it sooner? Everybody's journey is their own, and we respect that deeply. Another huge guideline of the space is that it is a refuge for women that are trying to find themselves again. And in making it a refuge, we are very intentional. That's a new word. We are very intentional about creating a space that is free from, from other women in the community creating fear, shame, or judgment. Okay. Doesn't mean we're not going to have our own internal fear, shame, or judgment that we are definitely working through and processing with each other, but we're working through that by holding each other with trust and respect. Another aspect of the community is, I mentioned this briefly earlier, is that, this is a place where we get to find the lightness in the dark. This is a space where, yes, we're going to be talking about really heavy shit that absolutely the women in this community have the space and the depth, and me as well, to hold space for. And also, we are going to be irreverent. We are going to be spicy. We are going to be fun and silly and find the places to also acknowledge that even in the darkness, there is so much light, and we are headed towards expansion in both of them, and expanding all of us to be able to hold that big, beautiful, complex breadth of what living a truly human life and going all in on it looks like. Now, another huge piece is I want to emphasize this again. This kind of ties into the piece that I was sharing earlier about every journey being honored. But really, this is an environment where there is no rush. Like, we get to slow down. We get to let our nervous systems take us through this journey with them in tandem, right? I think so much of our culture, at least once again in the US, emphasizes and celebrates taking action and making shit happen without at all discussing sometimes the cost that that can have on our nervous systems. So I wanted this space to be a place where there is a slowing down and a recognizing that your journey can unfold in the timing it needs to, and that there is so much support here for that rather than pressure. Support is our focus rather than pressure or forcing of like, oh my God, we got to get to the decision because once we get to the decision, it's going to be so much better. No, we are learning the tools right now in the community to be with your body through that decision, to support yourself. Because as you guys know, those are the tools you're going to need once you make the decision either way. So let's learn them now. Another guideline of the community is really making this, I feel so strongly that often when we are considering divorce, we get labeled many times by our spouses as being crazy for wanting more, as being selfish, right? These really negative cultural, what I would say, our cultural lies about us as women that really limit us or label us in ways that inhibit our ability to be our biggest selves. So a big community piece is understanding and celebrating that your bigness, your desires, your wants, they are all welcomed here, and they are not too much. This is not a space where we're going to say, ooh, you're getting too big for your britches. Maybe you should, settle and be happy. This is a space where you get to acknowledge, maybe for the first time in spaces like this, that you want more. And instead of women getting competitive with you about that or, getting catty, it's like, yeah, because we understand when you get more and I get more and we all get to live more into who we are, everybody thrives. It's not a zero-sum game. It's not when somebody else has more, I have less. Everybody gets to thrive. And this ties into, my final guideline, which is that I really wanted this space to be a place to learn new community here. And what I mean by new community is that in the past, I think most of us, if we think about the communities we've been in, often they are not supportive necessarily in ways that are really key. And I want to offer that, even though I grew up with a lot of community through Mormonism, key aspects of that community were also really, really detrimental. And I would offer there was like a lot of unspoken competitiveness in those communities. There was a lot of, the mask wearing, the having to pretend to be accepted, to be a part of the group. And if you at all veer off or do something differently and you're not like everybody else, there's a lot of judgment and shame. So I wanted to acknowledge that many of us have been excluded or hurt by communities that we didn't conform to or fit into. And even, in high school or even in college, maybe not fitting in with other women or feeling that with women, this is definitely I don't know if I would call it a side effect, but it's definitely a consequence of patriarchy and the way it has pitted women against each other, that, we may have in the past had relationships with women that have felt competitive, or that there's just not this, it can get weird amongst women, right? I want to acknowledge that. And I've experienced that for most of my life, I really did not have very many close girlfriends when I was younger, in high school and in college, especially in high school. Like I don't know what it was, but often women were kind of more antagonistic to me. I don't know if they felt intimidated but it was hard. It was hard to feel alienated around other women. And really only in the last, I would say 3 to 4 years have I really learned kind of what that is about me. And instead of continuing to like shrink away like I would when I was younger, I've embraced that like, okay, other people are going to feel maybe intimidated or uncomfortable around me, and I'm going to make them feel like I'm going to step into that space, that void. I'm not going to wait for them to come to me. I'm going to come to them. And so you guys hear that in me, that like brave, bold, here I am, and you're safe with me kind of energy. And that's what I really wanted to have in this community. And what it does have is an energy amongst women where it is like everybody's got your back. This is a group of sisters. This is a group of, you know, in many ways, I love that energy of the big sister energy of women who fucking like adore, love you, will do anything for you, have your back. And also there's no competition, and they see you though, and they don't need to come in and rescue you. They're like, you got this. Good job. Come on, baby, let's go. So those are some of the guidelines for the community, which I loved getting to share them with you all because I'm like, holy fuck, yeah, this is the kind of community I want to be in. This is what I want to create. Oh, and it exists. Hell yes. So now I want to dive into the application process for y'all. This was something that as I started building the community, seeing how important it was really came up strongly for me. And it's something I'm really proud of, that this is not just a community that, you know, you can click a button and boom, sign up and be in. And I want to take some time to explain why that is. So one of the things that emerged pretty early on in my first month with my founding members was a lot of desire for extra protection for the community. And that came about in the form of having an NDA and ultimately what is now, so I also have an end user agreement that are so beautifully created. I just want to pause for a second and acknowledge like the beautiful experience I had. So as a business owner, I have not in the past had to use any like attorneys or done really any legal documents for my work in the past. So this was my first time, and it was a bit of its own journey, like got in touch with multiple attorneys. They did not work out, and being led and guided until I found this wonderful attorney that I was able to let, you know, shadow into the community, see what was happening with the women, able to meet with her and really express my feelings around the importance of the community and protecting it. And then having her craft this really, really beautiful NDA, an end user agreement that all, you know, anybody who joins the community, everyone in the community is required to sign to ensure the confidentiality and trust from the start of joining that community, and for all of the women in it, right? This is a space where we're not wearing masks, where we are using our real names. So that is really the first piece in the application process, is being willing and ready to sign that. The other piece from there, and this will be when you go to sign up for the community, you'll be asked certain questions. And at the end of those, you'll be taken into an application for an interview process. And I've crafted this really beautiful, I think in total, it'll have about 15 minutes of recorded interviews from you, but it'll take you longer to do that because you'll be reading through the questions, kind of thinking about what you want to say, and then actually recording yourself answering about 5 to 6 in-depth questions. And this is your chance to really get to share with me, because at the moment, especially here at the beginning with the community, I'm going to be reviewing every single one of the applications. In the future, we may have my personal assistant be doing that, but for right now, I feel really strongly in this beginning parts of the community to have my eyes on every single person entering. And who knows, like I said, that may be something that I just keep indefinitely with the community. But in this application process where you get to do this interview, it is a chance for you to get on knowing that I'm going to be watching this video and to really share where you are at, what you are seeking most, and what you can offer it to the community. This is like your chance to shine. And I want you to approach the interview from that process. I think so many of us as women, when we hear, you've got to apply or it's an interview process, we go into that shitty headspace of I'm not good enough and, oh, will they accept me? Or I do not want that to be the energy that you are coming to this space from. This interview process is as much for me. I really built it in a way that it's as much for me as it is for you because a huge piece of what the community is about, what I'm wanting the women coming in to be learning and growing into is valuing yourself, is seeing things you want, going for them and advocating and owning like, this is me. Here's why I deserve to be here. And here's what I want to get from this space. And so I've built out the interview process to help facilitate that, to give you the opportunity to really advocate and communicate where you're at, why you want to be in the community. And it's also on my end to really help make sure that the community is, as we go forward, being filled with women who are really ready to both give and receive deeply. This is not a community, like I said, for just sitting on the sidelines and kind of watching. I want women who are here to contribute and to also walk this path and be changed by it, changed by the experiences that they are seeing, the coaching that they are receiving, the women that they are connecting with. And to do that, right, I had to create this onboarding that protects the exclusivity of the community because it is really special and it is exclusive in that, as you guys heard earlier, it's built for a very specific type of woman that is in this process of considering divorce and that is looking for a very specific type of transformation. So I've put a lot of care into the NDA and end user agreements, also into the interview process that you'll be going through to really continue to keep building what is an incredibly safe and supportive group. And after you have, after you've submitted that interview, that's when the NDA and end user agreement will be sent over to you. You'll sign those and then your interview will be reviewed. And once it is, if you're accepted or not, you'll end up receiving a notification. And, for those of you, I want to be very clear. Some of you will not be a fit for the community and that is okay. It really is. There have been moments in my life, I'm thinking specifically, I remember there was a coach that I was really, really into at one point, and I applied for her mastermind. This was a big, huge investment, really wanted to coach with her. I had to do an application process. That application process probably took me like 2 hours of writing and submitted it and didn't get accepted. And I remember at the time, I had like a little bit of disappointment, but I learned enough about my journey at that point to know that when things I want to work out don't work out, that's a sign from the universe. And I take it as like, okay, something better is on its way, or there's a different route that I'm meant to take. So please know that if you do not end up getting to be a part of the community, it may just be a timing thing. It may be something where like in the future it's a better fit, but it also may mean, and I don't want to even say may, it means there is a different journey waiting out there for you. And to really, instead of taking it, which I know, I'm like feeling, I gotta back off a little bit because I'm feeling the people pleasing part in me that wants to like make y'all feel good about being rejected if you don't get in. So I just want to step back and be like, some of y'all are going to be really disappointed and that's okay. I think that's part of your journey. And I hope that you'll take that and let it propel you into wherever the other places are that you are meant to be going. Also acknowledging, like I said, sometimes it's just a timing piece, like where you're at in your journey. I'm going to be reviewing each of these videos and I am going to be looking for women that have that signature, that vibrational signature of where they are at in their journey and why they want to be a part of the community. So when you're doing that interview process, if you are like really wanting to be a part of this world with me and these other women, let your freak flag fly. Like, let yourself be all in on that interview process and really be yourself. So I will say too, you're going to want to make sure you record yourself somewhere where you can speak freely. I'm already predicting and expecting that most of these interviews are probably going to happen in cars. I have so many coaching calls that happen in cars. I love it. Okay, so now that you have an idea of what the application process is, let's dive into a little bit more of the nuts and bolts of what my members are actually experiencing once they are inside the community. So one of the things that everybody has, reached back out to me and said they love is the coaching calls. This is something I was nervous about when I started the community. I'd never done group coaching calls before. Fucking sent it, and it's amazing. I am actually really obsessed with how beautiful the coaching calls are. I think I said this recently in the last podcast episode, that it's like getting to go one-on-one, but with the format of there being other women on the call supporting and getting to experience it in real time. And then also it being recorded for those who want to watch later, which is just having that, it's just multiplying that effect, right? That ripple effect. So the coaching calls, we have at least 2 a month. They are done live, and in the community, you have the opportunity to email my assistant ahead of time with what you're wanting to be coached on. And then based off of those women, that's who I end up coaching. At the moment, the women in the community right now, because the community is, beautifully smaller, at the moment we have maybe somewhere around 20 women in the community, maybe a little bit less than that, because I'm thinking that's including me and my assistant who are both in the community. But because it's a smaller group, we've had women be able to get on calls and just kind of like free flow, because we hadn't had anybody send in requests. As the community grows, I'm sure that will change. But at the moment, you send in a request. Based off of those requests that I see, I pick specific people when we get on the call. I call on them, and we end up coaching in real time. It's coaching given by me, and it's tailored to the individual challenges that the person I'm coaching is bringing up. Those coaching calls, I would say there is at this moment, the way I'm structuring those coaching calls, there's an emphasis on like deep, lasting transformations rather than surface level solutions. I've seen coaching before where they kind of keep it short and quick, and we may try that format, I don't know, sometime in the future. But for right now, I found that I've been going really deep with the women that end up on those coaching calls. So that has been, I would say, like one of the biggest highlights. One of my favorite key components that I built into the community is these coaching calls, and something that the majority of the women are like, yeah, this is one of my favorite things. Now, the other thing that I've got, another component in the community that was really fun for me to build out, is that I have a monthly theme. So each month we are focusing on a different topic. I know this month we are focusing on boundaries. Last month we were focusing on, dancing with fear rather than being paralyzed by it. And along with that theme, for that month, we have all of these polls and questions and chats going out, and journal prompts at the end of each week that are letting you kind of go deeper. There's a question of the week that drops on every Monday. We tie in other resources, like we do a book that's themed for each month. Last month we did Jen Sincero's You Are a Badass. So what I have noticed is, in having a specific theme and topic for the month, it really syncs up all of our journeys. It's really amazing how it does that. And because we have this intention for the month, we see progress directly in those areas. Like last month was all about dancing with fear. And that was the month that we had like maybe 2 to 3 women end up having really, what I would say were conversations that they were very afraid of having with their spouses. Some of them even going so far as to say like, hey, we're getting divorced. I'm moving forward. This is what's happening. So I've seen how these different themes really allow you to focus and concentrate your work with intention, which you guys know, the more intentional you are, the more you are focused and committed to a specific idea, often the better results you get. Some of the ones that I'm excited about that are in the future, we're definitely going to have ones around dealing with childhood trauma. I know I have a month that's specifically devoted to CPTSD. That, holy shit, y'all, it is really everywhere in my clients. It's one of the biggest tools that I use nowadays around helping us manage emotional flashbacks and regulating the nervous system. I've got some exciting ones in the future that I'm really looking forward to. I've got one that's all about desire. I'm hoping to have a friend of mine who is, I've got a couple different coaches actually that I know, one that does a lot of work with Tantra, one that is a sex coach that I want to be able to have presenting for the workshops those months. So we've got ones around rebuilding self-trust. We're going to have ones that are diving into understanding like narcissistic abuse. It runs the gamut. I literally have over 2 years of themes set up and ready moving forward. I remember the week that I took to like digest all that and to really start pouring into what I wanted to be teaching and then building out the structure for those 2 years. And it is going to be a fucking fabulous 2 years of themes in this community, with every single one of them being something that I am incredibly excited and can't wait to teach. Now, I already mentioned it a little bit, but yeah, one of the components we have in the community is interactive workshops. So we have one of those each month. And these are different in format from the coaching calls. These are opportunities where, yes, I'm teaching on the workshop, or in the future, as I'm able to get in guests, there will be guests teaching and facilitating these workshops. But one of the key components I love about them is they always involve breakout rooms, which allow and like really foster this deeper, more personal connecting between the women in the community. I've seen on these workshops just lots of opportunities. These are spaces where you get to connect one-on-one or in smaller groups. I'm thinking of the workshop we did last week where we started the workshop, then we went into the breakout rooms. And when they all came back from the breakout rooms, like everybody on the Zoom call was smiling and laughing, or just, their faces had changed. And I was like, what have you all been talking about in your breakout rooms? Because I want to be a part of that. So I want to highlight and point out that one of the things I wanted in this community was facilitating opportunities for you to actually get to meet women in the community one-on-one. This is what the workshops are for. We also have these spaces in the community that at the moment are specifically like, we have these breakout rooms for certain topics. We have ones on narcissism. We have ones on fundamentalism, for those of us that have left fundamentalist religions, and one on affairs. And these are rooms that you won't automatically be put into, but that you can go join depending on if that's a topic that relates to you, where you want to be able to talk more specifically with women who are experiencing those things. So that's another space that I love, just knowing, and it's a space too where I drop specific resources around that. So I recently was working with ChatGPT on really fleshing out what covert narcissism actually looks like. It's actually pretty difficult to spot it. One of my clients was really struggling with that. So I was like, Chat, teach me, tell me about this. Came up with a whole PDF around it and ended up sharing it in that specific space, because not everybody's dealing with narcissistic abuse, but those that are can join that space and be discussing and also getting resources tailored to that. Okay, so that is just a glimpse down into the inner bones of the community. I want to talk a little bit before kind of closing out this podcast episode with the impact that I've seen so far from the community. I knew, like I said, that this was going to be a special space, but what has blown me out of the water is how much this space is supporting the women that are in it taking massive steps forward in their lives and making massive changes. Even more so than when I work with someone one-on-one, there's only so much I can do as one person. But in the community, this is a resource that you have access to all the time, right? There's women posting, there's the book that you're reading for the month that you can be commenting on. I've even seen women in the community that they felt like special connections with. I was kind of emphasizing this over the last month to go and reach out individually. And as they've done that, I've had women who like downloaded Voxer and are now Voxering each other outside of the community. And that is really the impact that is having comes from these pieces I was mentioning earlier of understanding the way community works and how it can be more powerful than just one-on-one connections. Because when you feel a part of a group and you feel like you have that peer support from multiple women, and I would also offer, like, there is this sense, I think, of, I don't like the word that's coming forward is like shared accountability. I don't like that word as much because I think it makes it sound like, you have to be doing things, but it's like a yummy type of accountability because it's an accountability to being your biggest self, to being more of you. And I think that's kind of what you guys felt in that last episode that I dropped. My accountability to myself in speaking up and being seen by the rest of you. It felt great to do that. That's also happening for my women in the community, right? And when you have that energy behind you, it makes lasting change more achievable. And that was just a piece that, like, I knew the community was going to be a great place for support. I had no idea the impact it was going to have in actually helping my women, like, this rapidly start up-leveling, vibrationally moving into more grounded confidence and certainty of who they are, and then making those changes. Also, I've noticed, and this is one thing that I really would love to just drop here for those of you that are going to, apply and get into the community. One of the things I've loved the most is when women in the community will drop on our feed. We have a feed where anybody can be, posting and sharing. When they'll drop something specific to them that they're going through, that they're like interested in or struggling with or wanting some support on. And everybody will start sharing. And it really, I've noticed, I think it accelerates the healing potential for those women. And then also big time, the problem solving compared to if this specific woman wasn't in the community and she was just taking this to even just her coach, right? I'm going to coach her with just kind of one. I can provide a lot of perspectives, but I can't provide the perspectives that like 5 to 10 other women can. And I've noticed, and I've loved this, that women sharing, they'll provide ideas or insights or perspectives that even if it's not what she's necessarily going to choose, in somebody else in the community hearing that perspective shared, they're like, oh, I'm not alone. That's what I was thinking too. So the community, in allowing for all of these shared experiences, empathy, and support, what I've seen is this collective energy that's being created by everybody really helps move each of the members forward. And as I know from meeting with so many of you, one of the things that you often are wanting the most is to be unstuck, is to start moving forward, is to start feeling like you're making progress. And that doesn't have to look like having the conversation with your husband. For other members in the community, right? That looks like setting some boundaries around what physical touch is going to look like at the moment in their relationship. That may look like maybe moving into having conversations around, I need to go, I want to go have some more free time for me. I want you to be watching the kids so that I can go take time on my own. So it's all sorts of different spots in their journeys where they are getting to be seen, be acknowledged in shame-free, judgment-free spaces, which then allows them to ground more deeply into their lived experience. And from that space, start moving the needle forward. Okay, so I want to close by really just taking a moment to come back to that energy that I had at the beginning. Okay. to really reflect with all of you on the heart of what, yes, I've talked about lots of the ins and outs, and I love that I got to tell you some of the like bones and the, I just see it as I've fleshed out more of what the community actually is and what it looks like to get into it. But I want to come back to the real heart and soul of it, which is that this community isn't just a space. It is a movement. It is a reclamation of power. It is the breaking of generational cycles. And I really believe that it is a celebration of women getting to rewrite their stories individually, together, collectively. They are reclaiming their right to write their story however they want to. And for so many of them, that comes from this community being a space where divorce is not seen as bad. Divorce is not seen as an end. It is not something, considering it is not something to be hidden or ashamed of. The things that you are thinking about while you're in the process of considering is not something that you have to keep locked away and isolate and pretend isn't happening. Rather, this process is a doorway, a chance to really discover, maybe for the first time for many of them, who they really are, who you really are, to heal through that process and to create a life that actually feels fully aligned with your truth. This is the space to start uncovering that truth. We can't create a life aligned with your truth unless we know what that truth is. And for way too long, God, I have so much just grief and gratitude for the women that went before us, right? The women who have had to walk this path alone, feeling isolated and judged and misunderstood. That was a huge part of my journey. And actually, that's probably going to have been a lot of your journeys, right? Because we are the way showers. We are the ones taking this narrative and changing it, creating the space where it will be different for the generations of women to come. So I want to acknowledge that, for too long, that has been our experience. But the truth is, and this is the really surreal part of it, y'all, you are not alone. There are thousands, hundreds of thousands of women out there in this boat. And that's what the community shows you, is that you are not doing this alone. There are other brilliant, beautiful, amazing, outspoken, fiery, also, scared, sometimes shy, timid, unsure of themselves women who are also in the same boat. And this community is meant to be a safeguard for them, a place that exists to hold all of you so that you can be seen and cheer each other on as you step into these versions of yourselves that are bold and unapologetic. And it is one of the greatest gifts I have given myself to get to be at the forefront of that, to get to be a person creating this space, because the courage, I just want to say, the courage and the transformation, the sheer magic I get to see of watching these women reclaim their joy and trust their inner compass, it's beyond anything that I could have imagined. And it is what has fueled me for these 4 years, right? This is what I have seen in my one-on-ones. If you guys wonder, how did Britta become who she is? How is she so bold and unapologetic? It's because I have been given the huge gift of, over the last 4 years, literally walking side by side with my one-on-one clients as they do these incredible journeys, watching them choose themselves, watching them expand into their biggest selves. And that is what has given me this fire, this incredible, I know you guys can hear it. If you're listening to the podcast, you have felt that pull, that energy that comes from me, from having gotten to work with so many women who are choosing those kinds of lives. And it's what's fueled me into choosing that life over and over again for myself, right? Just taking this journey, this dream that I have, and making it even bigger. And I want you to know that if you're craving that sense of the connection, of belonging, of being surrounded by women who truly get it, this is your invitation. This is me extending the invitation to you that this is your home. This is your place. This community is what you've been looking for. If you feel it deep down in your soul, and that's, I'm always coming off of that. That's what I go back to, is like, you'll know where your soul tribe is. You'll know who you're meant to be with by how it feels deep down in your gut, in your body, in your chest. Then I want to call out specifically to you and say, I'd love to have you with us. You are the exact women that I want to welcome into this space, because this isn't just about being a part of a group, y'all. This isn't just about being, it's not a group. It's not. This is a revolution. This is a community that, through their own individual journeys and the journeys that they are taking with each other, are taking the stigma out of divorce. They are the living, breathing revolution. They are the living, breathing examples of creating resources and support. Like, do you see it? This is how you do it. You become, through going through your own journey with other women, you become the very resources and support for women considering divorce that I've been talking about. And this is the legacy that together we all go on to, I don't even want to say leave, because that makes it seem like it's going to have an ending. I want this to be something that goes out into the world and continues forward, where, I don't even want to say how many years, but years from now, where there are women who grow up in a world where there is this whole community where they know, oh, if you're considering divorce, it's not a big deal. And that becomes like a norm in the world, right? In this area, and can spread with enough time. I always say, I said this recently to my partner when everything went down with the election. I said, isn't it going to be crazy how in, 100, 200 years, people are going to look back and be like, oh my God, isn't that crazy that at one point they took away abortion rights and they voted against women? And because in 100 to 200 years, that will be so unpopular that people will not even understand how anybody could have that kind of opinion. It's kind of the same way I feel when we look back on World War II, where we're like, what the fuck? How were there people in the world that could hate people so awfully and want this kind of stuff? I see a world in the future like that around divorce, around being like, what were people thinking back then when they thought divorce was so awful and they shamed people into staying in their marriages and they told them to get small and to, we know so much more now, right? That's the vision. And these are the seeds being planted around that being the future. So I want to just thank you for sharing this space with me on this episode today. Thank you to all of you that have been listening to the podcast, that are opening really very bravely your hearts and considering what could be possible for yourself, letting yourself dream of what it could feel like to be in a sisterhood like this, and really pushing up against that cognitive dissonance, right? The programming that tells you, no, you are alone. It does have to be hard. You do have to do, nobody will, get you. You will be judged. You're pushing up against that and you're saying, you know what? Wait a second. I think there's a different journey possible for me. I think there's something else. I want to believe that there is a different way to do this, a way where I can be loved and seen and actually have my cup filled as I go through this journey and come out the other side with more connection rather than less. So I cannot wait to see where this journey is going to take all of us Today is the day, right? The doors are opening. On the show notes of this, there will be a link that will take you over to the community where you'll get to sign up. Ultimately, you'll be led through that process with the interview and signing the NDA and end user agreements. Those will be reviewed. And then, I will be opening the doors. So for those of you that get accepted, those doors will be fully opening come January. That's when you will actually walk in to the community, which I think will be so exciting. That January 2025, start of a new year, that will be, for me, that will feel like, the moment when the community really gets opened to the bigger world at large. I've been so incredibly grateful to have these past few months with my amazing founding members. They will always hold a very special place in my heart, going through these, multiple months with me, learning the ins and outs, showing me what was possible. Really, y'all, this is pretty amazing for me to have just 2 months ago thought, I'm just going to open this community and it's going to be amazing, but also like, I'm just going to keep chugging along, and to now be 2-3 months later and like, okay, holy shit, 2025 is the year of the community. Like, that is where we're really going to grow, and to have expanded my visions. And I owe a great deal of that to the women who are the founding members and the women who will be there waiting for those of you getting to join, to welcome you, these incredible big sisters, little sisters. All of the energy in that space is just the kind of sisters you wish maybe you did had, or that you wish you had. I never got to have a big sister. I was always the big sister. Maybe that's why I have such strong big sister energy. So I'm really proud that that is what the space holds so deeply. So I can't wait to see those of you that will be joining us. And I, of course, will be so honored to get to walk on this journey with you. And until next time, until the next episode, I hope you all just deeply drop in, take care of yourself. I know this is, going to be dropping a week before we're kind of heading into the holidays, or a couple weeks. So really be taking care of yourselves at this time. Keep stepping toward your light and being gentle to yourselves, and know that I love you and I see you. Till next time.